Welcome to Buffalo Pregame, your source for live Buffalo football discussion, news, analysis, opinions, and more. Presented by ASM Publications and Bills Digest.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into the show. It is Buffalo Pregame. My name is Alex Brasky, here with you, as I will be every week, and excited to do so as I move along on this new venture that's been highly successful thus far, getting plenty of action on the Substack with the recent news that Landon Jackson has been placed on the PUP list. And later in the show, we'll also discuss the Bills secondary with Carl Jones of News 4 and Ryan Talbot of Shout, a Buffalo football podcast. So a lot to get in here. And we start with the Landon Jackson news, which was unexpected. He made it through the offseason program unscathed. And now that he's been placed on the PUP list, there are some details to get into. That news was per the NFL Transaction Wire. Matt Perino of Shout, a Buffalo football podcast, reached a league source and has received news that the Bills are hopeful that Landon Jackson will be back off the PUP list in time for practice next week. The Bills rookies did report today, the rest of the team reporting next Wednesday. So that could be the reason why Landon Jackson had to be placed on the PUP list today. But as far as the PUP list is concerned, players placed on the PUP list count toward the team's 90-man roster, but can be removed from the list at any time during camp. Tommy Doyle was placed on the PUP list entering last year's training camp, an unfortunate end to his career. However, once removed from the PUP list, the player cannot go back on PUP during training camp. If Jackson is to remain on the PUP list entering the regular season, he'll be forced to miss Buffalo's first 4 games of the year. So nothing to panic about quite yet. As I said before, he could be removed at any time during training camp, even before training camp fully gets underway, with veterans reporting next Wednesday. So as I said, do not hit the panic button with Landon Jackson. Now, if he remains on the PUP list entering the regular season, that will be time to panic, because like I said, he'll miss the first 4 games of the year. And as I alluded to earlier, it's an unknown injury for Landon Jackson, as he got through the offseason program and performed well, looked good out there with his teammates, spoke to the media, I think once or twice off to the side. So there was nothing to worry about coming out of the offseason program. But this injury cropping up apparently during some offseason workout, and now that he's reported to training camp along with his rookie teammates, the Bills are under league rule forced to report it, and apparently forcing him out of any workouts the rookies might be participating in together before training camp kicks into high gear. So that's the reason why he's been placed on the PUP list at this time, and they didn't wait until next week when training camp fully gets underway. The Bills did deal with a few other injuries during the offseason, including a calf injury sustained by edge rusher Joey Bosa, also a hamstring tweak for Max Hairston. But general manager Brandon Beane said to the media in his post-offseason remarks, I should say, that no player that sustained an injury during the offseason program was in danger of missing any time during training camp. So this isn't a situation with Landon Jackson where he was injured at the tail end of the last practice. Nothing like that, at least nothing like that was reported at that time. But obviously, as time has transpired during the offseason, something has cropped up with Landon Jackson. Jackson was selected with the number 72 overall pick, 3rd round of this year's draft, 4 years, $6.6 million rookie contract, $1.1 million signing bonus. Now, there were some injury troubles with Landon Jackson coming out of high school. His first year in college, tore his left ACL twice, an ankle fracture as well. And then at the tail end of his last collegiate season, suffered a neck injury that forced him out of his team's final game against Missouri. So that's the injury history with Landon Jackson. It's nothing, as far as I know, that could be lingering from his collegiate career. The more worrisome injuries, not that a neck injury isn't worrisome. He was carted off the field in that game against Missouri, went to the hospital. He was released with a clean bill of health and determined no further treatment was needed as far as my quick research when this occurred happened. So it's nothing to be concerned with in terms of a lower body injury that he could have hit a snag with or anything like that, a soft tissue injury that he had coming into the draft. It seems like this is something that he's sustained during his offseason work, whether it be with his teammates at the facility or off by himself, as players typically go their separate ways this time of year. I know that Dalton Kincaid, in a recent piece written by Ty Dunn, said that he was really the only player left in Orchard Park, and his parents came and stayed with him. So not sure where the injury occurred, not sure the nature of the injury at this time for Landon Jackson, but it will be something to monitor over the next several days if more news is to leak out or we get any video from the Bills with their rookies reporting or anything like that. So be sure to stay tuned to the Substack as well as the podcast here, Buffalo Pregame, and we'll be sure to update you. Now, there's another Bills rookie dealing with a situation that may limit his availability come training camp time, and that is TJ Sanders, with second-round rookies potentially holding out across the league with the holdup with guaranteed money. TJ Sanders is lumped into that group, and he has yet to sign his rookie contract. And the first two picks of the second round by the Browns, and I forget the other team, my apologies, but the first two picks of the second round were provided guaranteed contracts. I want to say the Carolina Panthers, perhaps. The first two picks were provided guaranteed contracts, and that led to all second-round rookies now expecting guaranteed contracts. So that's what's leading to the holdup in that situation with TJ Sanders, part of that group. I'm sure his agent is pressing the Bills to give him that guaranteed money, and I can't blame him. In today's day and age, these rookies don't really make hand over fist. I mentioned with Landon Jackson, he's $6.6 million in the third round. Let's see what second round rookies are making this year. But I totally see what these guys are doing. The shelf life of an NFL player is limited, and at the same time, I understand where the owners are coming from, but these players are valuable to your organization, and when you've had two teams do it already and set that precedent, while I don't think that Terry Pagula will come out and be quick to do that, I think the Bills should do that in good faith. Let's see. The last 2024 second rounder to have any guaranteed money in the fourth year was Arizona cornerback Max Melton. This is last year. 2.49% of his money was guaranteed. I'm struggling to find how much these guys are making this year, but I do know it was the first two picks of the second round, got their money fully guaranteed, and now that's become the expectation. So we'll see if TJ Sanders shows up to training camp, and if not, I guess if he shows up to training camp and if he's out there as he was during the offseason, he didn't show any sign of slowing down his participation. I'm not sure. I didn't get a chance to talk with him. I'm not sure if anybody talked to him during training camp. Yes, it was Jaden Higgins of the Texans and Carson Schwessinger of the Browns. $11 million this year. So that's going to be around that mark is going to be the price tag for TJ Sanders. And I believe that $11 million fully guaranteed throughout the length of the contract. So it's something to watch. It's not something similar to the case with Landon Jackson. It's not something to hit the panic button about. This is an unprecedented situation in the NFL, and anything concerning the NFL owners, as we saw recently with the collusion scandal, trying to withhold that guaranteed money they really hold on to that guaranteed money like grim death. They're billionaires, most of them. Their teams are valued in the billions, but they're not willing to part with guaranteed money for what are their employees out there risking life and limb to make their living. So I say good for the players. I wouldn't like to see TJ Sanders hold out. I've done a complete 180 on him since the Bills drafted him in the second round. I didn't like how they moved up to get him, but watching him during the offseason program, albeit during a non-contact period of the offseason, I did like what I saw from TJ Sanders. And one of my bold predictions, as I've said on a previous show on my Substack, is TJ Sanders is going to lead this defensive tackle group in sacks. A step back from Ed Oliver last year, expecting big things from TJ Sanders. So it's going to be important to get him in camp and get him to report with this guaranteed money situation, really putting a snag into things across the NFL outside of those two teams with the Texans and the Browns. But let's move along to some further topics here on the show, as we do have a couple of guests today. Carl Jones of News 4 and Ryan Talbot of Shout, a Buffalo Football Podcast, did a lot of discussion about the Bills secondary, also sprinkled in some talk about Bills training camp, the guy's favorite part about training camp and everything like that. So still plenty to check out on this show. We're going to go to Carl first, and we'll be back a little bit later live to wrap up the show. These two interviews with Carl and Ryan, which I'll come in and split. These were pre-recorded before the Landon Jackson news, so we weren't able to touch base on that. But we'll get their opinion on the secondary. We'll go back around the horn with Landon Jackson to close the show. Here's our first guest, Carl Jones of News 4. All right, here with Carl Jones of News 4 on really what is approaching the eve of training camp here, just over a week away at St. John Fisher University. Carl of News 4, so he'll be all over the beat, Buffalo Kickoff Live, and all the other good stuff that those folks put out. Carl, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. It's kind of bittersweet, of course. Can't wait for the return to football. Also, that means our summer is dwindling down as well. So on one aspect, I'm excited. The other side, I'm like, man, I would love to just relax and not have to work all day. But it is what it is.
Hey, at least it doesn't go back to your college days where you're waking up and you're going to have to go run wind sprints and go through the grind of double practices. So
yes, I am not missing those days one bit at all.
What is your favorite part of training camp now that you're on the beat? There's a lot of aspects of it that make it different than the coverage throughout the course of the season. You get a little bit more up close and personal with the players and the fans, of course, who surround the field. What's your favorite part of training camp? Is it the kind of unfettered access that you get in comparison to the regular season, or is it that interaction with the fans, or is it a mixture of both?
I would say it's a mixture of both. When I think back to my playing days and the collegiate days, the access was extremely limited. I think the media was only allowed to watch stretch lines for us, and there were no fans whatsoever outside of just one preseason scrimmage. Right. So you weren't really exposed to the orange faithful at all during that time of year. So being able to see a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, see Josh Allen up close and personal, that's always cool to me, just seeing that on the other side. I know if they don't have the funds or the means to go out to Orchard Park and watch a game, being able to watch Josh Allen in that setting, I know that makes those kids those kids' dreams come true. And then once they get to the regular season, you know, Alex, the access is kind of taken aback a little bit, where you're not able to just grab a player walking off the field and just say, hey, can I talk to you for 15, 20 minutes? I mean, depending on the player, you can go half an hour if they ain't got nothing available the rest of that day. So from our perspective, you really get some good stories and really get how the players are feeling. So that I love that part of it. But after practice, when you're just walking and you just happen to see the 4th string running back get bombarded with autograph requests, even that player may not even be known by that little kid right there, but just having a Buffalo Bill sign his hat, his shirt, sometimes his arm, makes that little kid's day.
And I think it's really a fun time for the players as well, especially the young players, the rookies. For example, last year I saw Dwayne Carter. He got inducted into I think it's the Water Buffalo Club that Bills Mafia has. There's so many of these different factions of Bills Mafia, and one of them being, I think, this Water Buffalo Club. It goes back to the Flintstones with the tall hats and the horns, and he got to put his hat on the sideline at St. John Fisher, interact with the fans, take some photos with other members of the club and some young kids. So I think it's also kind of a new experience, like you said, for the players and being able to interact. So I think it's good all around for the media, fans, and players alike. And now with Hard Knocks there, the microscope's going to be dialed in even further on Pittsburgh, New York. But let's talk safety, Carl. That's really why I brought you in. You've had experience on the field and have really done a nice job since you've left the field breaking things down in terms of secondary. You're not limited to that, but that's obviously where your expertise lies. So let's talk safety, starting with Cole Bishop. The Bills giving him really the reins to win the job opposite Taylor Rapp this offseason. He's had some ups and downs throughout the offseason program, especially some downs during mandatory minicamp where he was out with another preseason injury, which is becoming a concern now. He missed some time, I believe, during training camp last year and now during mandatory minicamp with what I believe is a core injury. We haven't gotten a report from the team. We don't receive those until training camp comes around. But what have you seen from Cole Bishop that gives you confidence that he can win this job? Are you confident that he can win this job? Because dating back to last year, had some trouble in coverage, really looked good in pursuit in terms of locking down ball carriers, and I think he led the Bills in tackles during that AFC Championship game. So there's been some ups and downs for Bishop in terms of his time on the field this past regular season and this offseason. Are you confident that he can win the safety job?
I am confident, and it was a point that you pointed on right there in terms of his pursuit and his athletic ability to make certain plays on the field that the other players in that room just physically can't make, whether it is running down a ball carrier on a certain angle or it's guarding someone in coverage or deep down 20, 25, 30 yards down the field. His calling card coming out of Utah was that he was really, really athletic, and he was able to use those gifts to make plays for the Utes, whether it's blitzing the quarterback or making tackle for losses in the backfield or being a robber and getting interceptions over the field. I just actually watched the Utah-Baylor game. I'm a nut. I'm so bored this time of year. I just watched the Utah-Baylor game in 2023.
No baseball for Carl. He's watching 2023 college football. I love it.
Yes. Sorry for you Yankees fans. I'm not really watching too much Aaron Judge these days, but I'm watching that, and the plays that he made in terms of over the middle of the field and just how athletic he is. The Bills, quite frankly, don't have someone else with that same juice in that room. So if you're going to make the case that as long as he can rely on those gifts while also being able to understand the playbook a little bit more and understand where he is supposed to be on any certain down or distance, I think that gives you optimism, because I think Damar Hamlin is the opposite. Not saying that he is a slouch by any means. Anyone that's in the NFL has met the bar of athletic requirements to play the position, but he's not an S-tier athlete, I would say, by any means, or even an A-tier athlete. And I think that's what Cole Bishop has to leg up. So if you are the Bills, if you're Sean McDermott and Bobby Babbage, you will lean on the fact and say, you know what? We can coach up a guy to a certain threshold, but there are certain things on a whiteboard or on a chalkboard that he can make on the field that we can't coach him up to do because he's so athletically gifted. So if you're the Bills, if they're even, like coming out of September 1st, you go with the more athletically gifted player because they can make a few more plays that you quite frankly can't coach.
For sure. I think they're comfortable with what Hamlin has to offer. But when you talk ceiling, the ceiling for Cole Bishop's skill set is just really much, much higher than Damar Hamlin's. I think Damar Hamlin is going to give you that consistency, that reliability within the system with his knowledge spread over years performing within this system. But the hope for Bishop is, like you said, he can start to gain experience and increase that knowledge, whether it be through rubbing off practicing against someone like a Damar Hamlin, a Taylor Rapp, or just through his overall experience on the field. So once that catches up with the overall ability, I think he can really start to become a threat in coverage as well, which is something that was lacking last year. And I think we saw it with Taylor Rapp when he first got here too. I think his ability to come up and hit has always been there, but he struggled a little bit in coverage. And it's a complicated system here in Buffalo, play a lot of zone coverage. The safeties are called upon to do a lot. So I think Taylor Rapp has come along, and I think they're looking for Cole Bishop to do just the same. How about a dark horse candidate, Derek Forrest? Last year, you see the Bills bring in Mike Edwards. He sustains I think it was a lower body hamstring injury in the preseason, was never able to latch on with the team in any significant way. Derek Forrest, at this point, he's been out there during the offseason kind of mixing and matching just like the others with that first team, and it's been kind of a mixed bag for everybody. So I think at this point, it could be a three-man race. Is that how you see it, with Derek Forrest kind of being that dark horse that, like I said, the team knows what it has in Hamlin? Derek Forrest could be that wild card, potentially comes out of nowhere and sneaks this job.
I think that's a fair way to put it. The team knows what they have in DeMar Hamlin, and that's not a good or a bad thing. They just know the player that they've seen in their building for the past 4 or 5 years. Dark Forrest, who had, I believe, a pretty decent year with the Commanders in 2022 or 3, and for whatever reason just wasn't able to get back in the starting lineup and consistently play again. If you're the Bills and you just want to look on a pure optimistic view, about a decade ago, a Micah Hyde or a Jordan Poyer who playing time was fairly inconsistent before they got here in Orchard Park, and they were able to find some magic with those two players, and the rest is history. I am not projecting that Dark Forrest will be an all-pro. I am not saying that, everyone. But what I am saying, though, is that for whatever reason, Sean McDermott, Bobby Babbage, and the coaching staff here is able to tap into something with these players, especially on the back end, that maybe they weren't able to get in other places. So I'm very intrigued to see what he does in training camp at St. John Fisher. It's obviously tough with safeties because they're not tackling. They can't bring guys down to the ground. But even if just they're in the right place, a couple tip passes, 7-on-7, they don't do a lot of one-on-ones. I'm locked in on him because I just want to see how athletic is he? Can he make plays on the ball? How are his hands? Is he making plays in the backfield? I'm tuned into all of that.
Yeah, and Derek Forrest, 2022, started 11 games for the Commanders, 4 interceptions during that season. So he does have the ball skills that the Bills are looking for. And there were some stats posted by Joe Marino. I think I brought it up on the podcast on a previous episode that shows that the Bills have been able to maintain that consistency in terms of turning the ball over. And I think it's because of the personnel that they bring in, but also the way that they coach their players up. So Derek Forrest certainly has exhibited that ability in the past, and that might give him the ability to sneak this job as well. How about some of the younger guys? Jordan Hancock specifically, he's going to mix into this safety room. I think that could be where he lands in terms of his NFL future. They drafted him kind of as a hybrid cornerback safety, but I think during the offseason program, I saw him a little bit more at safety, and I think his skill set might speak to safety a little bit better. Do you see it a similar way? And is there anything that stood out to you in terms of Jordan Hancock's ability during the offseason program? Like you said, it's tough this time of year with the limited contact and the lack of friendly fire. I think for a younger player, it's going to come down to how quickly they can learn things. And Dorian Strong comes in as kind of a more polished player in that regard. But what have you seen from Jordan Hancock?
I'm a big Ohio State fan, for all those who don't know. So I've been able to watch Jordan Hancock actually for the past 3-4 years. And he's bounced around the secondary, corner, nickel, a little bit of safety. And this year for the Buckeyes, he played mostly nickel, but then at times he did move back there to safety. And I think his skill set is perfect for what the Bills are looking for, a player who was always in the right place for Ohio State. Did he make the splash plays all the time? No, that's what they had the other 5-star players out there doing. But he was always consistent. And for a player who's surrounded by all these first-round picks, the fact that he's always on the field says a lot about how smart he is, and the coaches trust him to at least do his 111 to steal a turn from Sean McDermott. So I'm intrigued to see where he lines up. Brandon Beane in the offseason said he's going to be at safety. We've seen him throughout the offseason program. He's been back there as well. We'll see how crowded the room gets. Maybe they try him at a nickel just to make the 53-man roster. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they'll be able to sneak him onto a practice squad. But I've seen him for the past few years for the Buckeyes. Don't really expect splash plays from him, but consistent, steady. And when you think about Bills secondary players for the last X amount of years, they kind of fit that bill of just like, hey, I don't know how many big plays they're going to make, but you know he's going to be in the right place 9 times out of 10.
And that speaks to the special team side as well. I think with his athleticism, he'll be able to be a contributor there. And if you're going to be a fringe roster guy for this Bills team, you need to be able to play special teams unless you have some other outstanding part of your skill set, whereas like in a wide receiver circumstance, if you're a big, strong, fast guy and you have something like that to offer, you can get away with maybe being placed into specialty situations. But I think with Hancock, he's going to have to be able to develop that special teams ability and have the team rely on him in that sense as his career goes. Just a couple more here. Does Trey White have any juice left? We'll flip over to the cornerback position. Cornerback 2 is going to be a point of emphasis for the Bills entering training camp, really the most important positional battle that they have. And it seems to be Trey White taking on Max Hairston in this positional battle, the rookie, dealing with some off-the-field stuff and dealing with an injury sustained at the end of the offseason program. But does Trey White have any juice left? I think from my perspective, I saw some of the ability that you saw in his past, but maybe some of the athleticism isn't quite there. What have you seen from Trey White during the offseason?
I want to preface this by saying I am not a doctor. I just want to make this abundantly clear. I am not a doctor. And you can look at the Trey White situations one of two ways.
Right.
For a more optimistic view, I've been in defensive back rooms and on teams with players who have recovered from knee injuries, Achilles injuries. And the further they get removed from the injury, the more confident they are and the more they're just out there playing free again, especially at the defensive back position where it's so reactionary. I am reacting to what the receiver is doing. I'm reacting to what the offense is doing in general. I don't have time to be thinking about how my knee feels, how my Achilles feels, or any lower extremity because I am so reliant on those limbs. So now the fact that he's been 2 years removed from those severe injuries, the optimistic view is saying, hey, he's more confident now. He can just go out there and play. And last year, as the season went on in 2024, he looked much better in Baltimore than he did in Los Angeles, if you want to look at it from that point of view. The other side, though, is usually when you get near 30 or on the other side of 30 and couple it with the fact that you have suffered 2 severe injuries for the lower extremities, it is hard to bounce back to be the same player. I'm not a doctor, but I just know that I got eyes and that we've been around the game, you and I, for long enough to know that's how it goes for a lot of players. Would I expect Trey White, without any doctor expertise, to be the same player he was as an All-Pro in 2019 and 2020, 2021? I don't know if that's realistic, but I think he could be a competent to solid player out there for the Bills who you're not going to give the red dot treatment if you're an offense. And what I mean by that is when 2-7's on the field, we got to go at him. That's I think that's probably the most realistic view. But to be quite frank with you, I don't want to cop out here, but he's either going to be more confident and feeling better than ever, or all the tread in those tires are gone, and we're going to find out relatively soon in training camp.
Yeah, and I'm just not sure the team is comfortable with throwing Maxwell Hairston out there come week 1. So I think they're going to give Trey White a try. I'm just not so sure how long he's going to be able to hold down a starting role if he is indeed offered that to start the season. I think he's going to struggle with speed guys on the outside. We saw that throughout the offseason program, getting beaten by the likes of Elijah Moore, Josh Palmer, kind of time and again. He did have good reps in addition. It was kind of a mixed bag, but you did see certain instances where he just wasn't able to keep up with the guys after the top of the route. So we'll see how it plays out with Trey White. But I think another adjustment that the Bills are going to have to make is there's been this talk about maybe more man coverage. And I think that might suit a Maxwell Hairston a little bit more than a Tre'Davious White. And Mike Pellegrino has been brought in here. What do you know about him? Is he indeed being brought in to help them play maybe a little bit more at man coverage? Is that something you expect out of the Bills this year?
I don't know. Usually when a coaching staff has a guy strong and it has a pedigree as strong as Sean McDermott, they don't really change their stripes too often, but they'll make tweaks here and there on the margin. So whether it's, hey, on 3rd down, instead of playing 40% man coverage, we'll uptick it to 45, or we'll uptick it to like 46, 47%. So I don't think there'll be wholesale changes where we're all like, oh my gosh, the Bills defense looks drastically different this year. I think it'll be more incremental situations against certain teams and certain packages where a Pellegrino comes in and gives them more flexibility and more knowledge of how to combat that. And also personnel changes that as well. Like you can have a coaching staff who feels so staunch about their system, but if you don't have the players to execute it, it doesn't matter. And quite frankly, last year, Pellegrino could have been here and they could have hired 12 other coaches who excelled in man coverage that wouldn't have been ideal for the Bills personnel last season. I think they're a little bit more equipped this year. Not all the way there, but I think they're more equipped this year to play that more versatile brand of football.
Yeah, you need that youth, that speed, that burst in order to play that man-to-man, something that Carl had plenty of at Syracuse University. But why don't you tell the people before you get out of here what you guys are bringing to the table come training camp? What are the plans for News 4's coverage over the next few weeks?
Yeah, we're really excited. We rebranded to Bills Kickoff Live now instead of Buffalo Kickoff Live. So next Thursday, I believe July 24th will be our first show. The guys will be out there at St. John Fisher. I'll be back at the station manning things down there in Buffalo. And same show, just rebranding things a little bit. So first, still BKL will be out next Thursday. And then the entire, I guess for the entire year, we'll be having recaps, YouTube, X, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you get your football stuff, by all means. That's what we'll be working on there. And all of us just really excited just to see all the media, the fans, players, all the good jazz again. Because even though I'm sad my summer's ending, it's good to be around my extended family once again.
For sure. Follow him at Jones11_. Carl, thanks for joining me. We'll catch you down the road, my friend.
For sure. Have a good one.
I was in a little corner of the screen. I'm still having trouble with those transitions. I got to figure those out with the pre-recorded show. But Joshua, thank you for watching. And anybody who would like to comment, I think the best place to comment is really on YouTube, and I'm trying to build the following over there. So please subscribe not only to the Buffalo Pregame Substack, but also the Buffalo Pregame YouTube channel. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram, really wherever you follow your Bills news. So please do me that favor, and also subscribe Apple, wherever you get your podcasts in audio form. So YouTube, Substack, wherever you get your podcasts, Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky. And before we move on to our conversation with Shout's Ryan Talbot, just want to give you my overview on the secondary as we continue to talk about it. On Buffalo Pregame Substack, my 53-man roster projection for the defense is going to continue tonight with the secondary. So I'd like you to be sure you log on to the Buffalo Pregame Substack. You can find already my 53-man roster projection for the defensive line. And then tonight I'll be posting my 53-man roster projection as far as the secondary is concerned. And we'll keep going with those throughout the week into training camp next week. So be sure to subscribe, follow along, and we'll keep you up to date with the news and notes from training camp and beyond. But the news of the day is Landon Jackson, if you're just joining us, out on the PUP list. And just some quick information on that. He is on the PUP list, but he is not forced to miss any time during the regular season quite yet. He can come off the PUP list at any time throughout training camp, although if he is to stay on the PUP list throughout training camp and into the regular season, then he will be forced to miss 4 games, the first 4 games of the regular season. So he does count against the team's 90-man roster. Bills rookies reported today, and that could be a reason why the team had to place him on the PUP list, as they've reached out, or Matt Perino has reached out to a league source that has informed him that the Bills expect him to be back in time for practice next week. It's an unknown injury. He was a full participant throughout the team's offseason program, so it is a bit of surprise here with Landon Jackson. So it will be something to monitor. There's nothing lingering from his collegiate career. Had a couple leg injuries throughout high school and early during his collegiate career, but during his final season, the only thing he dealt with was a neck injury that he was later cleared from. So it'll be interesting to follow, but nothing to hit the panic button about just yet with young Landon Jackson. And now we get to our next conversation with Ryan Talbot of the Shout podcast. All right, here with Ryan Talbot, co-host of the Shout Buffalo Football podcast and of NewYorkUp.com and Syracuse.com. Does great work with his cohort, Matt Perino, over there. Excited for training camp and excited for the updates to start flying. How are you, Ryan?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. This is really everybody's favorite time of year if you're a Bills fan, maybe outside of the playoffs when the Bills are pushing through round after round until the AFC Championship game, of course. But training camp brings a lot of excitement, a lot of unknown with it as well. And where we kind of left off with Carl, the guest who joined before you, was cornerback 2. And I asked him his opinion on Tre'Davious White, and he gave a detailed answer based on his experience, saying that the farther you get away from injury, the more comfortable a player gets with being themselves again. But at the same time, we all know when you sustain injuries and you start to age, those tools within your skill set start to get a little bit rusty. So Tre'Davious White, Max Hairston seem to be the leaders in the clubhouse in terms of this positional battle. Dane Jackson on the exterior of the conversation after he was brought in free agency. Where do you see Trey White at this stage of his career based on where he was with the Ravens last year? I know it's a little early to tell, but who are you expecting to seize this starting role at cornerback 2?
Yeah, well, first of all and foremost, I think Carl has a little bit of an inside track on the whole cornerback talk, but like you said, based on the expertise, but maybe I have him on the aging part. I can definitely beat him there.
There you go.
Trey White's interesting because when he started the season last year with the Rams, the tape was not good. It was really bad at times. And ultimately, he lands with the Ravens. And by the end of his time there were some real flashes of Trey White of old. I thought he played DK Metcalf really well in a game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. You saw some of the confidence coming back. The problem with that is we saw how long it took for him to get comfortable from the previous injury when he was in Buffalo. And he was at training camp. He was doing work at the side that time. Didn't play for quite a few weeks into that season. Came back. It was a slow start. We know he gets injured again down the road. And now it's just, is this going to cycle itself again? Not the serious injury part, but how much more can he really take to be a high-level cornerback? So I do have my questions there. I think in terms of depth, he brings a wealth of experience to that cornerback room. I would have some pretty big question marks, though, if he is starting and playing a significant role for this defense.
Yeah, I think he's going to start the season. I've maintained this throughout the season. I think that the Bills are going to rely on that experience and really give him a go to start the year. With the way that the schedule lays out, it's really a favorable schedule to start off the season. Outside of that Ravens matchup, come week 1, that Sunday night matchup, you have 6 or 7 games after that you can really maybe work Tre'Davious White in. Now, I think it's also going to have to be a consideration during training camp, much like it is with Joey Bosa. You might have to give him some maintenance, give him some of these days off. And we see some veteran rest days doled out throughout training camp every year. And I think he's going to have to be a candidate for those. Now, the trouble with that is when you're amid a fierce positional battle, you want to be out there every day. Missing one day and letting a player fit in and shine could be the end of your quest to lock down a starting role. So there's 2 sides to consider there. But I think with Tre'Davious White, with the injury history, with him being an aging player, you don't want to run him into the ground. And I think there's going to have to be some maintenance there. Are we counting out Dane Jackson and Jamarcus Ingram a little bit too soon? I know that I spoke with Perino previously, and he thinks that Jamarcus Ingram might be a dark horse in this conversation. Where do you sit with Dane Jackson, Jamarcus Ingram, maybe some of the other depth pieces? Am I leaving out a Dorian Strong for a Cinderella run at the cornerback 2 job? I don't think he really has much of an opportunity. But where do you see Dane Jackson and Jamarcus Ingram kind of fitting into this whole conversation and that race come training camp time?
I will say I'm probably higher on Dane Jackson than almost anyone on the beat in terms of his lack of injury history, his knowledge of the system, the fact that Buffalo really counted on him the first time Trey White suffered a serious injury. He was able to come in, get a lot of starting reps. He was not the flashiest cornerback. He is not someone that is going to win with speed or the way that Max Hairston potentially could if he ends up starting or winning that job some point this season, which you would anticipate happening. but he's just smart. He has the smarts. The Bills have been very good about finding veterans, young players throughout the entire Sean McDermott tenure that you can plug these guys in and they can contribute. Now, do I think he has a shot to start? No, I don't. I think it's a two-man race. I think it's Hairston, Trey White in training camp. And, Sean McDermott has said it's not that he doesn't want to start rookies. It's they have to earn that. And he's going to make Hairston try to earn it this summer against Trey White. And as you mentioned, maybe the maintenance days for guys like Trey White, Matt Milano, these older aging veteran players can open the door in some cases. Not so much in the Milano case, although Matt thinks Dorian Williams could maybe make some noise this summer. But at the cornerback position, if you're giving Trey White rest days and Max Hairston gets more and more comfortable with this system, maybe he does end up winning this job in summer outright. And, with the Christian Benford case, we've seen it where young players have been able to come in, plug in, and play at a pretty high level.
Yeah, I think the concern with Dane Jackson, for me anyway, is that tackling ability. He's a slighter player like a Maxwell Hairston, so I'm not sure he's going to be able to come up and lend assistance in run support the way that the Bills like their cornerbacks to be able to do. And when you don't have that outstanding part of your skill set like Maxwell Hairston's speed, I think, like you said, I think it becomes a very significant long shot for Dane Jackson to lock down any significant role. But he does offer that steady depth that I think that they're hoping that Damar Hamlin will offer at the safety position this year. And in order for that to happen, Cole Bishop's going to have to win the starting job. We'll touch on that in a moment. But my final question, kind of on the cornerback room and spreading into the safety room, Christian Benford and Taylor Rapp are two of the most critical players on this team outside of Josh Allen this year. If one or both of those players are to go down, I just don't know where this secondary is going to be. There's so much changeover behind them. They're hoping for so much to go right at cornerback 2 in that safety position opposite Taylor Rapp. If Christian Benford and or Taylor Rapp go down, this secondary is going to be lost.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, Christian Benford has played like a number one cornerback the last few years. He's finally starting to get that outside recognition outside of Western New York. That is, he gets the payday. And we saw in the championship game when he went down, it felt like it was an uphill battle for the Bills in that match against the Chiefs. Now, to their credit, they made a few stops late in the game. They stayed in it. But I do think that game alone could have had a much different outcome had Christian Benford been able to stay healthy because of the way he can lock down an opposing receiver. As for Taylor Rapp, he's so important to this defense, but he still plays such a physical or violent style that he's almost setting himself up to get injured. We've seen cases of friendly fire where he's hurt other players. We've seen cases where he's been hurt himself. You can't take that DNA out of the player usually, and you don't want to necessarily because that's just the way he plays. And a lot of the time it works out really well for you. We know he's smart. We know he knows this defense very well. He's been more and more comfortable the longer he's been here, but the injuries are a huge concern for him. And then obviously the concussions with Benford is something we're going to have to monitor as well.
Could you imagine Bills Mafia's reaction if early in the season we have Taylor Rapp and Christian Benford, a collision, and something happens there? They're going to be coming for Taylor Rapp's proverbial head in that situation. But yeah, I mean, these two guys in the secondary, what they've developed into, particularly Taylor Rapp, I think it's unquestioned Christian Benford's value amongst the fan base, but I think there is some hot and coldness for Taylor Rapp. But I think if you look at things, the way that he's been able to develop in terms of reliability and coverage, and like you said, he offers that physical ability that they like their safeties to play with. I think he's exactly what the Bills like to offer in their safety room. And if they could get Cole Bishop to turn into kind of Taylor Rapp light pretty quickly, I think they'd be super happy with that. And then they could kind of be a little bit more interchangeable with what they do on the back end, and it could make them a little bit more difficult to play against. Now, let's talk about Cole Bishop. Were you inspired by what you saw from him last season? I think if you were to ask me, I think there were too many instances in coverage where he just looked like he didn't know what he was doing. Now, he's had a complete offseason. He has looked a little bit more comfortable throughout the time that we saw him on the field during the offseason program before he went out with what I believe is a core injury during mandatory minicamp. But there's going to have to be that progression shown during training camp for, I think, Sean McDermott to be comfortable inserting him into the starting lineup immediately to start the year. And if he's to deal with any more injury trouble, that's going to play against him as well. Were you encouraged last year? Do you think there was something to build on there? And do you think, based on reports and everything, he's built on it this offseason?
So I thought there were more lows than highs last year as a rookie. You heard about the athleticism after he was drafted and how he can cover tight ends, things like that. And at times, you're right. He seemed a little lost, a step slow, a step behind players when he was called out there on the field and in action. And, the more he played, the better he looked, but it was still very inconsistent. This spring it's been night and day. He looked very comfortable. He was very vocal. You know that he was in the playbook and he's really feeling comfortable with it, which, that makes a lot of sense. When you're thrown in there as a rookie, whether you're playing a lot or not, there's so much on your plate. You're probably overwhelmed very easily. I think the level of comfort was encouraging. How much he was, talking, calling things out with his other teammates in the spring. So my hopes are high for him. But as you mentioned, injuries. He has to stay healthy. This seems to be the biggest problem with some of the players on this roster. Is there's all the talent in the world, but if they can't be on the field, it doesn't do much for this team. Availability is so important, and it's really up to Cole Bishop here in year 2 to prove that this year he can stay on the field because, as you mentioned, all expectations are for him to start opposite Taylor Rapp, to play a big role, and to make it so you can slide DeMar Hamlin into a true depth role and see what you have with some of these other pieces, whether it's Derek Forrest, who you brought in, and he faces an uphill battle too to make this roster. It's going to be interesting to see how the depth shakes out at safety. Cam Lewis, there's so many guys that they like that it's going to be interesting in terms of how the depth lays out, but they really want it to be Cole Bishop and Taylor Rapp at the end of the day as their starting 1-2.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Injuries and health, obviously, always important at every position group, but in the secondary, I think it just takes on a critical level of importance entering this preseason. They have to enter the regular season healthy and then maintain that health in the secondary. Because like I said, if they lose one of those big pieces, and then even if they lose one of these players in the running for a starting job, they just don't have the proven depth within the system that they've had the past many years, in my opinion. So I think there's a lot left to be said in terms of the secondary. It's going to be interesting to follow along throughout training camp. And I think with the amount of changeover, and especially at the depth level, but just the moving pieces on the defensive side, that's really what gives me pause when it comes to the Bills as a Super Bowl contender. You look at wide receiver as well, that a lot has to go right there. But with that said, I'm still expecting them to be the Titan of this AFC East. So my question to you is, how do you see this division? There's been a lot of changeover within the division this year. You look at the Dolphins making moves, the Jets lose their quarterback, New England, their quarterback getting 1 year more experience. They bring in Stephon Diggs, a new head coach as well. So I think we might see the outside of the Bills at the top. We might see a change in the hierarchy below them. And for my money, the Patriots, I think, are coming, and I think coming quick on the Bills' coattails here.
Yeah, I think they're going to be right in the mix for that number 2 team in the AFC East this season. It's going to take a big step, though, from Drake May, obviously. And I liked a lot of what I saw of him as a rookie last year. Year 2, though, sometimes there's that sophomore slump, but I like everything the Patriots have done in terms of building around him. The offensive line, the running back room now, that 1-2 punch, drafted a great back in this year's draft. They have Stevenson, who I still am pretty high on. I don't know if he has the weapons yet or enough weapons. I don't think Stephon Diggs, coming off of this injury, is a legit number 1 or even close to that at this point in his career, but they're doing things the right way there, at least. And you look at the Jets, I feel like they have a lot of star power, a lot of good players. The new coach in Aaron Glenn, I think, is going to command a lot of respect. I still have tons of questions about Justin Fields as their quarterback, though, and you can only go as far as your quarterback in this league 9 times out of 10. Sometimes the defense can carry you. And Miami is the most interesting team. it almost feels at times this offseason like they were having a soft reset of their roster.
Sure.
The trade with Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith, they really don't have anything in their tight end room now. And no knock on Darren Waller, but he hasn't been a productive high-level tight end since 2020. Maybe they still make a trade or they sign someone and that gets cut down the road, but that's a little confusing to me. Their cornerback room's a mess, in my opinion. But they have a really good front on paper, at least in my opinion. I'm very high on their edge rushers. I think that they drafted a good D tackle in Grant. And then on offense, as long as Tua stays healthy, which is so, it's a huge if. But when he is healthy, they're such a good team. You know that Tyreek Hill is going to be good. Jalen Waddle, Ache, they have the talent, but at the same time, they've made some questionable roster moves. So seeing how it all pans out is going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill took a step back last year in terms of production, but obviously that coincided with the Tua injury. So I want to see, that's one of my burning questions really for the league this year. I want to see if Tyreek Hill is finally going to take that step back, or if you can just simply chalk that up to Tua being out last season, because the 2 seasons before that, he was up close to 2,000 yards, and last year not even reaching 1,000 yards. Dealt with some off-the-field stuff last year as well, some distractions and otherwise. So it'll be interesting to see how Tyreek Hill bounces back. But training camp coming up, Ryan, I know it's one of your favorite times of year, one of my favorite times of year. What are you most excited for? What stands out to you about training camp when you're on the grounds there at St. John Fisher?
Yeah, for me, it's the atmosphere, the amount of fans. I know there's a lot of fans upset they didn't get tickets, but the fans that are there pack it in. They're loud. It does create a good environment for these players. It's a good welcome to the fan base for this rookie class, the new free agents. And then for me personally, I get to enjoy watching some of these competitions unfold. There's always those pleasant surprises like the Joe Andreessen story last year, making his way onto the, not just, from a undrafted player that had to have a rookie minicamp tryout to making the 53-man roster. So there's those feel-good stories as well, and I'm wondering maybe who can be that person this year, because it's going to be tough to make this roster as a UDFA type of player. I don't see that path happening, but can someone surprise us? Elijah Moore makes a ton of sense as a potential candidate, although I don't think he was necessarily terrible the last 2 years in Cleveland. He hasn't lived up to the draft stock and status, though, mostly because of the situations he's been.
All right. Tell the people what you have planned for training camp. I think you got a live show coming and much, much more with Shout in Syracuse.com.
Absolutely. We'll have a live show at Dorado again here at the tail end of training camp. Matt and I will be going live every day after practice. So tons of Shout podcasts coming your way.
All right, Ryan, thank you for joining us and helping us break down this Bills secondary. It's going to be interesting to follow along throughout training camp.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
See, I just can't figure out the transition. I'll get it as we go. And also got a new mic coming in the mail. When I started this podcast, the microphone crapped out on me, so I've been going with headphones. This is more of a visual more than anything. So new mic on the way, some refinement in the transitions. This podcast will really be on its way. But let's close with this just to update the people who have joined us midway through this podcast. Landon Jackson placed on the PUP list. No reason to panic. He can still return in time for the regular season. If he does stay on the PUP list for the regular season, he'll be forced to miss 4 games. But no big deal right now. Let's wait to see how this thing plays out. The Bills rookies reported today. That's why Buffalo had to pull the trigger and send it through the NFL's transaction wire. So let's take a step back. Let's take a chill pill, as they say, and just wait for training camp to officially get underway next week. And we'll see how the team progresses from there, because as we discussed on the show, a lot of questions in the secondary and a lot of questions up front along the line of scrimmage. And you can find more on that on the Buffalo Pregame Substack with my Buffalo Bills 53-man roster projection and the defensive line. Also, my bold predictions, one of them involved with TJ Sanders, one of the second-round picks in the NFL, who has been forced to kind of capitulate with the rest of the league, and I think capitulate's the right word, and kind of wait to see how things play out as far as the contracts are concerned with the guaranteed money and the top 2 picks of the second round, getting that guaranteed money and really creating a log jam for everybody else. So a lot to watch with TJ Sanders, a lot to watch with Landon Jackson, a lot to watch with this team overall at the edge rusher position. In addition, you had Joey Bosa, who missed time during the offseason program. So be sure to check out my 53-man roster projection on the Buffalo Pregame Substack. I lay out exactly who I think will make the team, who will get cut, and kind of lay out each player's role from my perspective at this point of the offseason. Also, subscribe to the Buffalo Pregame YouTube channel, trying to spread the news on that. And we'll get to a couple questions. One question here, or one comment here to close the show. Joshua Williams. Dane Jackson is Levi Wallace 2.0. He's okay as a plug and play, but hopefully not for long stretches. And that's what Ryan and myself alluded to earlier. Dane Jackson, at this point of his career, not someone you can rely on to come up and really support against the run. More of a trusty veteran, someone you can rely on to be a nice depth player within this Bills system. So I agree with you there, Joshua. And anybody else, leave your comments on X or YouTube. We'll get to them on the next show. But I'd like to thank Carl for joining me. I'd like to thank Ryan for joining me. And with the news of Landon Jackson, we'll continue to monitor that. Follow on X, and I'll be sure to post any further updates as we move along. But thank you for joining me. We'll see you next time.